Speaking with the men and women whose job it is to turn fledgling companies, and in today's case, young professionals, into industry leaders. Welcome to Success Dallas. I am your host, Dan Gibson. My guest today is Brad Ruekberg, which I should have asked beforehand.
You nailed it.
I nailed it. Awesome. I love it.
Nobody nails that.
I had it written down. I was like, I know I need to ask something else.
Wow.
I got it. Great. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show today, Brad. So Brad is the Career Services Director, providing career coaching, business classes, film classes for fledgling engineers in the audio visual training at MediaTech, which is a local school here in Dallas for that, as well as running his own company, Channel 3 Productions, channel3.com, which is full service. They offer full service film production when they've had success in the corporate, commercial, and government world.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, tell me a little bit about your background and probably how you got into the industry in the first place before training others and developing your own company.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Sure.
Love the studio.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. So I just always loved movies and theater. I mean, I just kind of grew up with that. As a kid in Dallas, I was part of the Dallas Theater Center Teen Children's Theater.
Was this in El Centro College by any chance?
No, this is the Dallas Theater Center. They were originally for a long time on Turtle Creek,
Okay.
in a Frank Lloyd Wright designed building. They're like the original art company in Dallas. They basically created the whole art district of Dallas. When they relocated, they took over Booker T. Washington. They created Booker T. Washington High School as the first real magnet school in Dallas for performing and visual arts. And that became the centerpiece of the arts district in Dallas. Before there was a museum of art down there, before there was the Meyerson Symphony Hall, before they even had a designer scheme for the art center, the person who started the Dallas Theater Center, Dr. Paul Baker, sort of created all that. And then they moved, they opened up a Dallas Theater Center, theater, which is still there in the middle of the arts district as well. And that's where they are. So I was part of the teen theater group. My parents had a ladies apparel store on Lemon Avenue nearby. I really came from Richardson schools. I was one of the first classes of people that went to that school. I went to that school where it was easier to get into that school. They would normally not let someone from Richardson into that school.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we kind of used my parents' store address to go.
Yeah.
So I was just, I was always into, being on both sides of the camera, being on both sides of theater as well, directing, writing, acting, all of that. So I just always had a love for that. So I made my own little movies. I had my own little Super 8 movie camera. I went to college in a school on Long Island, New York, and was a film major, but also was theater major as well, and just started working in. Theater doesn't really pay anything, So I did a little bit of that in New York, off Broadway.
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of glamour, but it's hard to get paid.
I learned a lot. But then I just started working in productions, and it'll show how old I am when I mention some of the things I worked on back in those days. But, just right as I just got out of college and all that, I worked on the movie Wall Street, with Charlie Sheen and all that as a location scout. Found a restaurant that they had a scene in with Daryl Hannah and Charlie Sheen, and worked as a production assistant on a number of things. Worked on a movie in L.A. with Esai Morales and got to know him, and then moved back to New York, and finally started working with a company called BLTV, which stood for Bob Lampel Television. And this was in the early days of MTV, when MTV had music videos. And they also had a news department. And we were basically the in-house news department for MTV. We'd do all these press junkets and the reopening of the Apollo Theater and interviews with people that I didn't know who they were at the time, like John Bon Jovi, again, showing how old I am. He was like a Jersey bar band guy that I was like, well, that looks like a Van Halen wannabe. Yeah. I had no idea who he would become.
To be fair, they are kind of Van Halen wannabes.
Well, but I mean, they
have a great, I grew up listening to their
that.
music and learning guitar, to them. So I'm not, dissing them, but But certainly, I can see how you could think that.
We interviewed lots of big, we interviewed Lionel Richie, Cyndi Lauper, lots of big people. I was the low man on the totem pole at that production company. It was a small company. Bob decided he didn't like being a businessman. He wanted to be more of a hired gun director or lighting director. He was the original lighting director for Todd Rundgren, did some of the very first music videos. They produced videos for Hall & Oates and some other big acts, that company I worked for. So when Bob dissolved his company, one of the guys bought his camera and kind of took over a lot of the clients from the production side. And I bought his editing system, and editing was so different. This is before digital. Mm-hmm. So this was an advanced editing system simply because it would read time code. You could type in a time code and it would roll the tape to where you were going. That was very advanced, and all the people from MTV loved that system. And so I started that's how I first got started with a partner of mine, an old buddy from Dallas that ended up moving to New York. It was a telecommunications guy on Wall Street, but he was a real technology genius, basically. So it was our first venture being in business. It was a lot of hard knocks, and wasn't drawing a salary. It was very difficult. New York was a difficult place to be at that time. Mm-hmm. This is before it got all cleaned up. But I learned a lot, got great experience, and when my parents closed that retail store in Dallas, I took that as an opportunity to come back and help them, and I've been away from them for so long. And my experience in New York, I came back to Dallas, and it was so different from when I first was trying to apply at production companies and agencies when I first graduated college. Now, with this resume from just a few years, everybody wanted to see me. I got no problem getting hired freelance, and then I got hired by this company called Channel 3 Productions as an employee. Eventually became a partner, and then eventually bought my last partner out.
Yeah, you're the big cheese now.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, there's a lot there. You've got a long history, and that's not me saying you're old. You were saying that. But no, you've got a long history. Starting in Richardson, which is funny because that's where my family comes from, and they went into productions, which is interesting. Maybe they've got a really good system over there. But you did mention previously with the film. I'm trying to remember what you called it. I guess the editing system, zipping to the new time
right.
codes. So with that, the world is changing. Terrestrial radio, television, kind of going away and moving towards, or at least shifting largely to social media content creation. Mm-hmm. How can someone become successful in this new? I say new. I mean, it's been around for a while now, but how can someone become successful in that? Still creating and producing, but in a new medium.
Yeah, great question. So we have all these, everything's going to keep changing and evolving. But some things are always going to stay the same. I mean, the basics of what makes something look good predates even film.
Yeah.
It predates, chemical emulsion film. I mean, it goes back to the days of Renaissance paintings and Greek theater and all that. It's the basics. And you know what? Paul Baker at the Theater Center, that was his whole concept. And he wrote a book called IA, Integration of Abilities. And it was about how, everything kind of comes down to just rhythm, what he called, I can't even remember them all. He'd be mad at me. Rhythm, line, color, there's certain defining things that kind of, so, I mean, that's, when you look at a film frame and you look at a Renaissance, it's the same kind of thing as, how they have a light source and just the angle and eye line, all those things, depth, all that horizon, all those things is what constitutes it. So the technology can keep changing, and and it's the economics. It's affected the economics more than but it hasn't. The craft of what makes something good isn't changing. Now, there's a lot of crap out there because people don't know.
There's a lot more of it.
They don't know what makes. Yeah, it's so cheap to get into this stuff, and that's what's really changed. I mean, when I got into film and video, we were shooting on film. That was real expensive. I mean, you had to buy film, you had to develop it, then transfer it to video. I mean, just that alone like would bust the budget on most things today.
Yeah, going a few minutes over on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
There's no dumping it off of an
Yeah,
SD card.
you had to be real careful about what you're shooting. Everything was so expensive. Now people just go around stream of consciousness, just filming stuff, and they have so much crap, and there's so much to go wade through when you're editing. And then the cameras are so light sensitive that they think they don't need light, and they don't realize, they're like, well, it's bright. I could see the image, and they don't know what lighting does to the mood of what you're, how you feel about what you're looking at, and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the clients don't have the same understanding of it. And that's kind of why I came to MediaTek in 2018. I was just getting a little frustrated. I'm not getting any younger. There's young people coming up that just they could just buy a whole production, what you would need to have a whole production company for the matter of maybe a couple grand. There's just no real investment into it. And so people are sometimes, it's like a race to the bottom with the clients of just trying to find cheap stuff. And I started saying it kind of started becoming like an Uber industry, like the Uber, where I'm getting booked at the last second and getting canceled a minute after that. And I just got kind of frustrated with it. But now I'm not so frustrated anymore. But
yeah, well, no, I mean, I get what you're saying. There's a lot of websites, like Fiverr's a good one that, you used to, if you wanted a website designed, you might have to shop around, and you're going to end up paying a premium for it. And now there's someone on, Fiverr that'll do it for $5.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I teach my students about the resources that are out there because they need it, and they need to do things probably. I mean, they're the ones who really need to do things as cheap as possible, but. When it becomes so predominant, it's kind of messed up the community that we really have had in film and in other trades like that as well, where you're working locally with people, you're throwing somebody a bone, they're throwing you a bone. Now it's like being thrown out to someplace in India or whatever, I have, to me, to save $100, or sometimes it comes down to like that. It's just not worth it. I want to work with people that I know locally, build a film industry and a video industry, and audio industry, music, anything here in Dallas.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's something that we would love too. It's just kind of the purpose behind this is to build some of that network. So I'm curious with. Being that you're in the career services, the director for MediaTek, how do you build a network capable of producing or introducing young engineers, producers, directors, cinematographers into a successful career in the entertainment production industry?
Well, one of the biggest things is networking, and it goes back to what I was talking about. But networking locally. But there's also definitely value to all the social media stuff. I mean, we can't ignore any of that stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's
reality.
That's where a lot of the product needs to be. So you need to understand how it all works. You may not like all of it, but you need to, it's there. It's free. So it's going to be used a lot. Now, free also means you may wake up one day and it's not there anymore. So don't put all your eggs in one basket with these free social media or free anything. But getting them to first understand the value of just networking with just each other. I just teach them that's the starting point. Who's in your network right now? And I tell them give me 28 first names of people that you know, period. That you know how to contact them and they know who you are. And a lot of them really hate that assignment. They struggle with it. And they're like, well, I just don't, and I'm like,
yeah, my dad, my sister, my mom.
Yeah. I'm like, start with your family.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of us who are fortunate enough to have good relationships with your family, there are people, unfortunately, that have a terrible, toxic, and that's a different situation. But if you don't have that, well, start with your family, and then think about, and then it's all those people that they know. And I tell them it's like the 6 degrees of separation. It's like I said. Somebody that I'd say that they don't have to be smart, they don't have to be successful, they don't have to be good looking, they don't have to be nice, but just that they know you. They may be just somebody that could be like butts in seats at a concert you're promoting. Think of it that way, or a movie premiere you're trying to do, or a venue you're trying to promote. But beyond that, they know somebody who knows somebody who's related to somebody who has a boat. And I always throw that out there. A boat, just like, don't you want to go shoot a music video on a boat?
Oh, for sure.
There's always so
Like
so that's the value of other
Prestige
people.
worldwide.
And I'm like, just look across, just at your fellow students, just network with the people here and think and go outside your comfort zone. Don't just network with people that are just like you. I mean, that have all the same opinions and all that kind of stuff and the same skills you have. If you're more of a producer, manager, people person, that kind, then partner up with somebody who's more of a really good technician and engineer, and vice versa. And I give the example about my business partner at Channel 3. We had very little in common as far as how we believed and, those kinds of things, our personal tastes, but we were perfect partners because we just balanced each other. His strengths were my weaknesses and vice versa. So start with that, and then start branching out, and then start looking at, okay, what are the other resources, if you want to be in recording studio, what are the other recording studios in your area? And then keep going from there to just the industry, and that's where the social media groups,
I wanted to touch on
you can learn a lot from stuff going on around the country and around the world for sure.
I mean, I think you have a great point with, as much as we are moving away from terrestrial radio, social media is not certainly stuck in stone. We just recently had the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk, which, no matter what you think about it, that is going to change the landscape, and we will continue to see that. So I think your point of, the people that you are in your sphere of influence, that here locally, likely, you certainly could have friends, if you move somewhere, but building a network.
They're talking about changing like the whole model for that, like going to like a subscription model, which I'd heard some people talking about just completely re-engineering social media that way.
Right. So I would assume that there's still going to be a place for content creation. That's really what, it's what it is at its core. But you're right. I mean, I think sticking with, or at least really building a network locally is a great call. So I think it's a great point. What do you think what's the most common mistake you see in inexperienced artists, engineers in the school that might be hindering their professional growth?
Oh, sure. Well, time management, with young people, it's like a domino effect, just simple time management. Because when you get behind, you forget about things, and it starts affecting your skills. You start getting, the fact that you forgot to do something or you were late to do something starts affecting your actual skills, and simply the discipline involved with time management will then carry over into all of your skills as well. So it's like either negative effect or a positive effect. If you're prepared, then you're going to set aside the time to achieve mastery in your skills. And you're not going to have the negative effects of being unprepared, override skills that you normally might be very good at, but because you've been preoccupied with how you've cost yourself with time management, it has affected your skills.
I've struggled with that. So I mean, I know that's something I think a lot of people do, especially the young people of today. That even the way they consume content is 15 seconds, 30 seconds. It's very quick and over and over and over.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a direct example of time management, but
it
probably is. You can get lost in.
And it's the organizational ability and the technology is like mirroring this kind of lack of structure and lack of organization, and it's just which is just encouraging even more of that. So there's a lot of like sort of a lack of like file management, computer type skills that I see a lot of, where people just they just do something and then what happens to it they don't know. They throw it up on their desktop and then they can't find it, or they just don't know where it is. And the whole nature of just using text instead of email, where it's just is just this continuous thread. And then you start looking at the way websites are being designed today, and it's the same thing. Instead of like pages where someone can get on and find stuff and kind of just stay on the site for a long time and get immersed in all this stuff, it's just this like one continuous page. So
Do you ever
I just see like, I mean, it's kind of affecting brains and everything. I just feel like pretty soon we're going to have no way of even understanding like American history or world history even. It's just kind of like, well, I don't know. Let's just keep scrolling back till
I'll do a Google search
till we see the Civil War.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we went too far. When was, it's just, the whole sense of organization and putting things in, it is just technology is changing that in a not good way.
So I guess that leads to my next question of being that you're seeing this trend on websites and social media is absolutely that way. Do you see a lot of successful people or a lot of successful projects or organizations that are structured that way, where their website is, a long continuous chain and they're
you can
making
still
tons of money?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're capitalizing on other things. I mean, people are still. It appeals to the large numbers of us, the vast majority of us, that just get completely distracted by the latest, shiniest object.
I'm certainly in that group at times. I understand.
So that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
They're going for that. And the social media is going for just engaging you and keeping you on sites. That's why I'm really interested to see what Elon Musk, when I heard them using that term subscription model, that's a real game changer, because all of social media is not done. It's the opposite. It's a free thing, and what you're giving, the cost to the user, since it's free, is really engagement, long, just kind of being on there for long periods of time, and the kinds of things that keep people on there for long periods of time sometimes are kind of negative things. And then, of course, their personal information is what they're ultimately paying for that time. Going to a subscription model, the need to gather personal information, I mean, they could still do that as a byproduct, but they're not needing to do that if you've got a subscription model.
Yeah, they're making their nut already.
Yeah, and they don't need to just keep you on and do whatever it takes to keep you on, including making you very mad and making you,
yell at people over the keyboard.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's absolutely true that that's what gets engagement. And I tell my students about it. I'm like, I made a rule a long time ago. I'm not going to engage in negative things on social media. I'm going to use it totally for positive. But that's not to say I don't sit there and hover and spend way too much time reading the stuff that really makes my blood boil, way more so than something positive, where I might just look at it like, oh, isn't that nice? Give it a like and move on. It's the stuff where it's like, this is untrue what they're saying, and then I get sucked into it. I'm not going to respond, but I'm sucked into it.
It's a black hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I end up falling into that, and I switch to comedy or something to make me laugh and
there you
positive.
Go. Yes, we all need much more of that.
Yeah. So as an editor starting out at Channel 3, ending up moving into partner and then owning the company, what are some of your, let's start with some of your biggest successes that you think that you guys have achieved?
Oh, yeah. Well, I we've been around for like 30 years or so. And we do, we've won 25 Telly Awards. Tellys are the most well-known awards for non-broadcast media, like basically what we call today web videos. But this was before there was a web even,
Yeah.
So, and you're competing against the biggest ad agencies and production companies in the world. So I'm proud of that. Among some of the, we've worked with a lot of big brands and a lot of big government groups. But I think what I'll start off with is just, I'm like I have a lot of my videos around town as sort of like permanent installations. I've kind of been like, I've done like the 100-year video for so many groups, including I've done the 100-year anniversary of or history of type video of the Dallas Public Library. I've done the 100 years, celebrating the century with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. So they had that video in constant play at the Meyerson. I had the 100-year anniversary video of Girl Scouts that they used at the state fair in the Hall of State when they had a big thing there a few years ago. 100-year anniversary video for Greyhound, one of my many big corporate clients that are based here in Dallas that I've done extensive work with. This isn't 100-year, but I had a contract with Parkland Hospital with the new Parkland, and they have one of my videos on permanent display in their museum section of their lobby, right next to a bust of JFK. So that's kind of a legacy type stuff that, after I'm gone, I don't know how much, they may not continue to play those videos, but they're owned by them. They're there. It's part of their permanent archives. And, as opposed to lots of other videos are they have a shelf life of 30 days and whatever they're promoting is over with. And those are still good videos, but stuff like that is forever.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I've seen some of those videos, and I can see the future. I mean, I'm not saying I can predict the future, but thinking forward, I can see someone pulling out a time. What's that called? Where you bury it?
Time capsule.
Time capsule.
Yeah.
And next to it, those videos are still playing.
Yeah.
Because they still want to tout the achievement of reaching 100 years in.
Right.
It's incredible.
Well, thank you.
Well, what are some of the challenges that you guys have overcome? Because those are big contracts, especially government contracts. There's background checks and
oh yeah. Well, what gave me new life, I mentioned that I was a little frustrated in 2018, but I had a good relationship with MediaTek, and it was a good situation to, good opportunities for students and grads to work on professional things with me on campus or off campus. And there was just enough work. It was a good balance. And then just as things started to I started getting busier again, COVID happened. Mm-hmm. And of course, my company, I was about to completely pull the plug on the company. It was just costing me money every month. I was having to personally fund the company to keep it going.
You still got to keep the lights on even though no one's shooting.
Right. Before things even really came back, one of my government contracts I had from 1999 to 2011 was with the Texas Department of Transportation. And we did about 3 dozen videos about electrical safety. State was mandated to do it based on some terrible accidents and lawsuits and so forth. And most of the videos we did were in the earlier part of the contract, going all the way back to 99 or 2000. The last few years of the contract was kind of in a wind down mode, but at least it kind of kept something going during the global recession that was going on in 2008, 2008, and 9. Even though we weren't doing a lot, it kept us going. Well, anyway, contract ended. So it's been 10 years since that contract ended and 20 years since we did some of the first videos. And obviously a lot of it needs to be updated. And it was all shot, this was all pre-HD.
Okay.
We finally got into HD during the contract, but we still had to format it in that 4:3, because that's how the first,
TVs weren't yet
15 videos were.
Yeah.
So we've had to weather all these technological things. And sometimes we were couldn't wait for the technology to change so that everyone would get up to speed with what's going on. With the 16, with HD is a great example. Mm-hmm. HD has been around since the 70s. It just wasn't economically feasible until about 2007.
I guess that's how we get HD versions of the old movies, is that they just reformat them?
Yeah, well, film is the only thing that really we saw that you could say technically is HD is film. Mm-hmm. I mean, 35 millimeter film.
Right.
That is HD. So if you have your original 35 millimeter film, and that's what you need to transfer to a HD file. Mm-hmm. Not if it was transferred to some video format that's not HD, then it's gone down. So the TxDOT, just to end that story, just couldn't have come at a better time than in November of 2020. And I had been in contact with them for years, just asking them, putting a bug in their ear.
And the network strong.
They knew that they needed to do something. They just didn't know when. And finally, in November 2020, they put it out to bid to redo all these videos now, update the message, but also obviously all the video would have to be reshot for the most part. And so we got that contract, and it just has given me completely new life.
So let's say someone's in your shoes, that it's a recession, which likely could be coming, a pandemic, which we all went through. So someone who's owns their own company, needs to keep the lights on, needs to continue. What would you say to them? Because you've continued and you've found success again after that.
I mean, government work is something that you can do to keep the doors open for sure, but that's where kind of understanding stuff about organization and to get through a government contract, you have to be really diligent. I mean, this was something I couldn't have been more familiar with the subject matter than this one, but it was very difficult. It was a 73-page request for proposal document I had to go through, and I had to do it. It took me like a week. It was like Thanksgiving week. Spent that whole week working on it, just addressing line by line by line. As it says in, paragraph 16.7, we do promise to such and such, and just being very organized and meticulous like that, and that's something that I see as kind of a challenge for especially younger people to do, that just haven't been forced to really organize and carefully read things and stuff like that.
That makes a lot of sense too. I'm glad that you touched on that. It's definitely coming back full circle to the youth that you see coming through. When I say, I use youth loosely, but maybe they didn't experience, even if they're not young, maybe they're coming into this industry. But I had someone tell me one time at work that they didn't like paperwork. They didn't like dealing with receipts, and that I understand that. I don't either. But it is a requirement, with the IRS, and there's real world complications, and not to mention scaling a company. If you're wanting to build something, maybe doing something by yourself is fine, but if you're wanting to scale it and really grow it, organization is something that's going to be key.
Oh yeah, and it's gonna save you money or cost you money when you're talking about saving receipts and stuff like that. That's the business stuff that I teach them for sure. It's just obviously save every if you get paper receipts, take a manila envelope, put them all in there. More and more of this stuff is electronic, so you need to create a folder on your computer. Use a computer. Yeah. Don't try to do everything on your phone.
Yeah,
that's the problem. These phone companies, I see them as really a big part of the problem. They really want to obsolete the computer. They want to obsolete everything but the phone. I mean, I used AT&T's one of my clients. I mean, I've heard them say this, years ago. That the phone, we want to replace the wallet. We want to, and then that they've pretty successfully done. Yeah. But this replacing the computer is just, that's where it really, so you could have like these free programs and TikTok and edit stuff with, that's just letting things do things automatically for you. We're just letting these machines do all this automatic stuff. Oh, let Wix build a website. You can either pick a template, which is already as easy as pie, or let Wix just create it for you, or just answer questions, or just, and let some machine do it.
I rented a tux for my cousin's upcoming wedding using one of the online, and it's exactly what you said. It said, you don't need to know, your inseam and your jacket size. We're going to ask you some questions. And
people love that.
Yeah.
They love it. They don't have to think. And what's happening is their brain's just going, it is shrinking. We are losing a major portion of our brain to really be able to do this stuff ourselves. We teach Adobe Premiere at MediaTek. I used to always edit on Final Cut, and Premiere is great. But I've realized
that's the cloud-based platform, correct?
Well, it's cloud-based in terms of updates and stuff like that. Automatic.
That's not what I was thinking.
You get all the updates and all that, but it just does. You don't have to think about what kind of files you're importing with that stuff. It just does it all on. So our students come out, and they don't really understand what different codecs are or file formats. They'll just whatever, it's like what you put in, it spits out. So that, if you're ingesting a lot of really huge files, then that's what they just kind of automatically output. And I'm like, oh my God, you gave me something that's like, 45 gigs. I mean, I can't, send this to somebody easily enough, you
Can
know.
you text it?
Yeah. Can't, it's like you can compress that down. They don't understand about compress, because Premiere just does all that stuff for them. They just push export and it's like done. They don't have to set up parameters. So it's all this automatic stuff. And I even include stuff like just asking Siri and Alexa and Echo everything, That's what's replacing research. I tell them research. I'm like, come up with a budget for this production. And the only way you're going to do that is to really know what an audio engineer charges in this town. And it's different from what they charge in Chicago and a cameraman and et cetera, et cetera. But no, a lot of these people are just like, Siri, tell me, and Siri's just giving them a generic, and that's a lot of the problems.
Well, I'm glad that we spend a lot of the time on organization and time management. I think that's something that I think many generations, but especially this upcoming one, is going to struggle with. So, yeah. So let me say this: is there anything that you want to give? If someone wants to get involved with Channel 3, Media Tech, how can they get a hold of you? How can I get involved?
Oh, absolutely. Well, mediatech.edu. And MediaTek, if someone is interested in digital media production from, the recording studio side or live sound side of things, or if they're interested in film production, those are our two biggest programs that have been around the longest. We also have a visual effects and animation program and a very new makeup for media and acting for media program. But our teachers are all industry professionals. I'm not the only one that has my own company. Most of us do up there. It's all about, getting real world professional experience. We bring in professionals and all that there. And our facilities are really second to none. I mean, everybody wants to book recording studio time at MediaTek because there's no studio any better than MediaTek's. We came from the Dallas Sound Lab, but the way to do that is I have to we're not a commercial studio, so I have to explain we're a school, and I hook them up with a current student and all that. So anyone thinking about that, we please welcome you to contact us. Go on our website, mediatech.edu, and just take a tour. And that's what really sells people is when they actually come, they just start drooling when they see the great facilities out at MediaTek.
I was actually there with Dallas Sound Labs.
That's where it started from, yeah.
I was friends with, when I say I was there, I didn't attend, but one of my friends did. And we got a lot of studio time because of that he needed people to come in and create. And it was, and this is 15 years ago, it was a gorgeous place then. So, and I can attest to, we've got a mutual friend of Tiffany Vollmer.
Yes.
Who voices one of the characters, Bulma, on Dragon Ball Z. And she's a teacher there. So, I mean, it is pretty world-class talent that you have teaching.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. We really do. Four-year university is great for lots of people. That's the way to go for a lot of people. No doubt about it. I went to a four-year university, and I'm glad I did. That's what I was suited for. But we all know there's lots and lots of people that that's not the best fit for them or the best use of their money, depending on what it is they're trying to do. That, getting an associate's degree and getting these hands-on skills, on this gear, from the day one that they're there, not having to wait till a year of gen eds or what, is the model that's successful for our students that come to MediaTek. A lot of them tried doing the four-year university thing, and it just didn't work for them. Mm-hmm. So that's what MediaTek. It's like we teach you the industry in about a year, and hopefully set you up to be in business doing this, as soon as you graduate.
Yeah, and using the networking that that you've got and you built there.
Absolutely.
Well, that's fantastic. Check out mediatech.edu and channel3.com. Thanks, Brad, for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.